team is always important. I would say at the later stage, which I'm thinking as Series B plus, there's more demonstration of the team's ability because the product is often built. They have a go-to-market team. You can look at some of the financials of the business. When I'm partnering companies at the earliest stages, as I said, sometimes there's no code, there's no product, there's no customers to talk to. At the late stages, you have a lot of data.
Astasia, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be back.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. I know you've been on the show in the past, but it's been a while, and it's also the first time that we've talked. So let's start by having you introduce yourself. So who are you? What do you do? And how did you get to where you are today?
Well, that's great. So hi, I'm Astasia Myers. I'm a partner at Quiet Capital, which is an early stage focused VC fund. I lead the enterprise practice at Quiet. I particularly focus on solutions that sell into technical audiences. So dev tools, AI, data, love things that are open source. The stages I focus on are very early. So pre-seed, seed, and Series A. I've been really humbled to partner with companies like LaunchDarkly, Solo.io, Dremio, Hex, among others. And, you asked about kind of my path into venture. I don't think anyone has an exact path. There's many different routes to get here. Mine is slightly unconventional, like most. I was born and raised in the Bay Area and really started my career working at two early stage enterprise software companies and product and customer engagement roles. Super enjoyed that experience, but I had this history of doing, academic research starting in high school. And so really wanted to continue to leverage my research skills interfacing with tech. And so, went into sell-side equity research to cover publicly traded tech companies in the cybersecurity, IT, and networking world. So think, VMware and Cisco and Palo Alto Networks, among others. And it was an absolutely wonderful experience. I realized through that process, I really like doing the deep dives about the innovators and up-and-coming companies that were going to disrupt the incumbents. So at that time, it was, Pure Storage and Nutanix and Nicira, everyone who was doing software-defined X to disrupt the, hardware vendors. And super enjoyed that work. And so wanted to get closer to that action. So reached out to the head of Cisco Corp Dev to join their team. I covered Cisco. I was a huge admirer of the business they built and how they really took their inorganic growth strategy seriously. I mean, the most acquisitive tech company of all time. I thought it would be a great place to go and learn. So joined the team and worked with the core business unit GMs for networking and servers, help them think through acquisitions, spin-ins, venture investing. Got to invest in businesses like Cohesity when I was there, which is very cool to see. Worked on this, the acquisition of SpringPath and the software-defined storage space. And, when you're in a role like that, it's very exciting because you get to see all these different transactional types. But when you're doing, mega acquisitions on one side and early stage venture investing on the other, it's really hard to, balance the two because, acquisitions, all hands on deck, lots of internal discussions and materials created. So given that I really liked working with early stage teams, helping them do certified designs with the Cisco BUs or marketing and sales, I decided to join a venture firm. I was part of Redpoint Ventures for 4.5 years on the early stage team, working with dev tools, AI and data companies. It was very exciting. And, about 1.5 years ago, I joined Quiet to do the enterprise practice, which has been really fun because we're even a little bit earlier than my old firm. So often partnering with day zero founders, barely have any code written, really investing in the belief of the exceptionalism of the team, their vision, and the big opportunity in front of them.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a incredible path. I think that interest that you have as a VC and sort of the dev tools, big data, AI is perfect for the Software Engineering Daily audience. And we have a lot of, I think, founders, aspiring founders, and just generally curious individuals that listen. So I definitely want to dive into your mind and during this conversation and how you sort of make decisions around investing. But you mentioned that you very early on you started with an interest in sort of academic research, and I'm curious how has that helped you, or maybe it hasn't, when you've moved into being on sort of the venture side of things. Is research still a big part of your job and sort of understanding where the market's going?
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of being a venture capitalist is the research side. Maybe it's because I didn't start there, when I was younger. We have the unique opportunity to build a hypothesis about a company or even a space and do work to validate it by talking to buyers, builders, and experts in these categories. See, a large majority of the work in this role is doing the research, really like grassroots style of distilling a whole bunch of different data, quantitative and qualitative, to drive to a sound decision for an investment, but also have a perspective on how a space is changing over time. What are the macro trends that are going to disrupt existing vendors, or what are new movements that are creating opportunity for founders?
Mm-hmm. And you have a particular interest, or at least the area of investing that you're on is the early stage investing. So how is that different than people who are working more on sort of later stage investing? What are the types of things that you need to be thinking about as an investor, and the things that you're looking for that might be different than someone who's coming in at a later stage?
Totally. As an early stage investor, team is so important. Oh my gosh. We just talked about research. We diligence the team members for their exceptionalism in a certain domain. It could be technical, it could be on the go-to-market side of the house. We really look for them to have a unique insight into the market that they are best positioned to solve, based on their track record of past work. Something that's very important to me is, teams go through ups and downs. It's not always like, straight up and to the right. And so we really do, we wish it was, it's so nice for everyone involved. But we really look for people that have demonstrated grit and tenacity in an aspect of their life. Someone that may have come from a humble beginning that overcame that through dedication, hard work. Someone that may have had a setback in their career, that has motivated them and put a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And with this company, they're going to do everything in their power to make it successful. Team is always important. I would say at the later stage, which I'm thinking as Series B plus, there's more demonstration of the team's ability because the product is often built. They have a go-to-market team. You can look at some of the financials of the business. When I'm partnering companies at the earliest stages, as I said, sometimes there's no code, there's no product, there's no customers to talk to. At the late stages, you have a lot of data. It's kind of a gradient of information that you have over time. The second thing that I look for in addition to team is really the product that they intend to build and the vision that the founders are executing against. And so, as I said, I personally don't need the product to be built, but I want a clear understanding of what it's going to look like, its core differentiation, and importantly, why that matters to the end user and buyer. It's great to be different and special, but it has to count for something when the product is used. And so we do a lot of research of connecting prospective founders. We partner with buyers. Often we're on sales calls with them. We reach out to our own community to do validation. And it's a very important part because team and vision are, the main things that we can anchor on because we don't have the data.
Yeah. And what you were saying about how, it's most journeys of a founding team or any company, it's not just, up and to the right, even to the successful ones. I think as an outsider, looking at a company, especially once they've reached some level of success, it's easy to, as an outsider, think like, oh, wow, like they just, everything went right for them. They knocked it out of the park. Or you get these stories that are covered in, TechCrunch Disrupt or wherever, and it's like overnight success, but you don't see the 8 years
Yeah.
of like grinding through, the, the like side of the road, like through all kinds of dirt and mud that it took to actually get to that place where they are perceived as this overnight success. So you talked about, team is a big part of this. So, and this idea of grit, which I 100% agree with, but how do you actually like assess someone's grit if they haven't founded a company before? What are the like signals that you're looking for that give you the sense that this person is going to be able to figure this out, even if they haven't figured it out today, and they're going to stick through even those like hard times, because things are going to get hard with every company. So how are you kind of like evaluating that at such an early stage?
Okay. Something that we do look for individuals that have taken something in their life from 0 to 1. It could be an open source project that they built, released, and have maintained over time. And, in open source communities, there can be many opinions about the progress forward, right? So an ability to communicate and manage. It could be doing something 0 to 1 inside of an existing business. Many phenomenal data and dev tool founders come out of large companies who built an internal tool from scratch, got the multi-stakeholder buy-in, and then was able to share it out with the end users internally. And it's not just in the professional world. I think it's great to see the ability to overcome challenges. Oh, we lost budget, but then we somehow persisted for this project. It's important to see in the personal life as well. As I said, is there an example of a hardship with their family, education, or, health that they were able to endure through? For me in particular, I even work with a founder today that got COVID very early on, and was building this company and actually got long COVID and like would not give up. And everyone around was like, this person is a beast. This is his life. He will do anything to make this happen. I'm not suggesting to put your health at risk, but it was just an indication of they're so deeply believing in what they're building and the why behind it that they will take extreme action. For others, it could be they were athletes, and somehow in the course of high school and college, they, decide because of injury, had to change paths. They thought they were going to be a professional, and they took the opportunity to reskill their skills and pursue a profession as an engineer or in product. And those are very hard choices. And that's something that you have to reconcile and endure. And so to see someone go from a hardship to taking that to their advantage and using it as motivation to go do something else that's really compelling speaks volumes.
Listen, yeah. So it's not necessarily the like grit of having founded something before, but there's signals essentially of, they've gone through something hard or a challenge in their life and they've been able to overcome it, is a good, like, gives you a sense essentially that this person could probably like figure this out, or they're not going to give up is at the first hurdle or something like that. I mean, is that your main sort of way of, evaluating or separating essentially like the A players from the B players, is around grit, or are there other things that you're also looking for?
As I said, I think it's, deep domain expertise and aptitude in a space that's demonstrated to their contributions in their field. I think it's important to have grit. I think it's also important to have very strong communication skills. As founders, in essence, you are salespeople. You are selling the vision. You are selling the product. You are selling to have people join in the earliest days. And so communication and persuasion is critical. And the next thing I think is also very important with founders is their ability to, you know, how to put this, their ability to have some area that they spike on incredibly well. Not every founder is going to be an expert in all things. Most of the founders I work with are deeply technical, know their field inside and out, and they appreciate that they need help along the way. It takes a village to build a startup. As investors, we try to contribute and help. Angels do that as well. Advisors. So founders that spike in one domain exceptionally well, but also have the, self perception that they need help, is something we look for. Those that are, open-minded and coachable.
Right. Yeah. Because you're right. Like, you're not going to be an expert in everything. And it's also important, that self-awareness, to realize where those gaps are and where you might need help are going to be key to building a successful team and a successful organization. And I think one of the things that you highlighted there was around essentially the founder or the founding team. They are the original sellers of the company, whether that's raising capital, closing their first customers, as well as bringing in talent to build out their team. They need to be able to have that strength in communication. I think that's something that sometimes we, especially people from the pure engineering community, you might miss. It's yeah, you can build the technology, but can you get people to follow you and believe in the vision of your product and communicate that and build a team and a culture? These are all the really, really tough components of building a great company and being successful.
Totally. Yeah, it's a great point, because amazing technology that no one hears about and knows about exists in a vacuum, right? And so communicating it out into the world is incredibly important for our founders.
Yeah, I built a lot of great technology in the early days of my career that no one but my mom ever heard of. So, I had to work for years to get better at the communication piece. So, given your interest in these different areas like AI, data, dev tools, there's so much innovation going on in those areas. How do you stay on top of everything that's going on in the market and the opportunities that you might have as an investor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been investing for 8 and 9 years, and it's really exciting because there are these macro trends that are huge unlocks. So when I started my career was the movement to the cloud and digging into, how that would change distributed infrastructure and the developer experience. Now it is the rise of foundational models and Gen AI, which has really taken the world by storm. And for me personally, I love Kubernetes and, cloud native tech, but that wasn't in, Time magazine necessarily, where my mom would be talking about it with me at the dinner table. So it's a different level of, excitement and enthusiasm about AI right now. The way that I like to stay up to date as, we are researchers. So we do a lot of reading. It's really back to the basics. Every morning I wake up and go through the news and the newsletters that I subscribe to. I listen to podcasts like Software Engineering Daily. There's a deluge of information that we're getting through, and at least what's very exciting and the AI space is, each week, each month has a macro trend that people are digging into, new concepts that are emerging. So earlier this year, it was the concepts of chaining and orchestrating large language models that I've written about on my blog, Memory Leak. Over the past month, it has been AI agents and, the repetition of workflows and more autonomy of systems, taking that not just on servers, but as an end user experience in the browser. next month, who knows, it could be retrieval systems, and how do we actually go and get the right data at the right time for these models. It's very exciting. And for me, given that I do invest in technical solutions, often it's academic papers as well. Like NeurIPS is amazing. And going to the conferences and hearing these authors speak about their work. It's very boots on the ground at the earliest stages to learn as much as quickly as possible to understand these markets, particularly in AI that is moving incredibly quickly.
Yeah, so I was actually at a meetup in the San Francisco area last night, and there's for like 20, 25 people there that work in the tech space, and I think everyone's sort of like default icebreaker question was what's your company's plan for AI?
No.
Like, and it's like almost a joke, but like everyone has an answer to that because they all have a plan for AI. So given like this huge explosion that's happened around generative AI, like, my parents are talking about it. Like, it reminds me of essentially the introduction of the internet in the late 90s, where everybody knew what it was and everybody's interested in it. It's like transforming the world. And then you had the same thing with like the introduction of the smartphone.
Totally.
And now this is like the next big trend. So how do you see that sort of impacting the venture capital landscape? Is it that every company now is just that's coming and pitching is going to have to be thinking about what is the AI component of whatever they're building? And is that also making it so that maybe other types of companies that don't have that are equally innovative but in a completely different space are going to get overlooked?
Mm-hmm. That is a wonderful question. It's something that we think about all the time, as you can imagine. Gen AI is not just impacting infrastructure and SaaS, but every domain from consumer to fintech and even defense tech. Internally, we even put together a thesis doc for our respective areas about what the broader impact will be. One thing that is interesting about, the adoption and use of AI and product experiences is, unlike moving from local license-based software to SaaS, or from, desktop to mobile, the ability for incumbents to integrate and compete with startups with their own AI strategy is very compelling. So like looking at Notion and Canva and Adobe and Microsoft, they're moving very quickly to embed AI functionality from chat and Q&A to summarization to content generation in their space. For us, when we're looking at startups, we are thinking through if it actually needs AI to be a 10x better experience. While AI has massive impact, it's not always the case that you have to have it, and even having it will make you differentiated. And that is because, as I said, the incumbents are embedding it in their process. So what we look for is if you're using AI, how does that create a superior workflow? How do you solve the pain point more accurately than alternatives? And also, if there is a data moat that you are creating as part of the product experience. So are you collecting insights from the end user that can inform your model and provide, a moat over time? For me, I don't necessarily think that all companies need an AI story, but they need to have a rationale of why it's not a good fit for their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think another thing that, I've thought about with this explosion as well is similar to how the public cloud has made it so that it's much faster to essentially do a company today, like in terms of the technology. Like 20 years ago, the first like year or two, you're buying hardware to do
Yep.
anything at scale. You're solving that problem. Now that problem is basically solved. It's like a commodity. You go to AWS, you go to Google Cloud or wherever, and you're off to the races, and you don't have to think about that. And you're building something from basically like day zero if you want. And now with the generative AI, things like ChatGPT and all the things that are happening there, now it's lowering the barrier to entry for other parts of, I think, the startup experience for creating content, email nurture, like all these types of things that you would actually have to sink time into, pay for resources. You might actually be able to get up and running much faster because you can essentially increase the efficiency of your existing workforce 5 or 10x. And that could actually increase the number of startups that are, getting funding, going to market so much faster because that barrier to entry now is significantly reduced.
Totally. It's so interesting you mentioned this because I was actually talking with a founder this week, and he was saying, oh, we originally thought that we were going to go hire 15 engineers to go build out this product. Now we think we can do it with 10 because we are using products like GitHub Copilot and some of the other AI-enabled workflow solutions. He's like, we think we can just get a lot more leverage out of our current employees and minimize the number of new hires we need to make to accomplish our product milestones. It's really interesting to hear that impact so early in the adoption of these tools. We will, the results will tell the level of productivity that early stage teams can get. But, most of the people I know that are working at businesses are playing around with ChatGPT, using it for Q&A, thinking about, modern RPA through a browser extension to capture workflows and do automations. But now it's AI enabled. So it is pretty cool to think about the benefits we could have from this. And also it enables, professionals to think about things that are more strategic than the blocking and tackling of the role.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think it's replacing individuals, but it's making individuals significantly more efficient, essentially. So, and I think it's just like how there's been evolution in, programming languages. Like, there was a period of time when everybody was programming in assembly, and it'd be crazy for someone to be doing that today unless there was like a really good reason, because the efficiency gains you get as an organization if you're working in a higher level language are there. And I think anybody who's like getting into engineering today, ideally they're thinking about, how can I leverage these tools to be better at my job? How can I free up my time to be thinking about like harder problems to solve, and not necessarily the kind of like repetitive tasks of pushing data. If I can offload that, then I can focus on things that are really complicated and are innovative, that are going to help drive whatever the business is trying to do.
Totally. It enables individuals to operate more in a specialist and chief architect type of mindset, because they're not,
right,
as you said, doing the basic blocking and tackling. They're thinking strategically about the product's evolution and the choices behind it.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the investments you've made in the past, and also how you're thinking around investment opportunities. So can you maybe share an example of a successful investment that you've made, and what were sort of the factors that contributed to that company's success, and how did you think? What was the convincing factor that led to you investing in them in the first place?
Okay. I think there's aspects that are similar around most businesses of what makes them successful, and then I'll dig into the particular company. Often it's as I said, the team, absolutely exceptional, can handle hardship and execute through it. There's the aspect of them just getting shit done, honestly. You'd be surprised how hard it is to just get shit done at the earliest stages, and those that perform and execute are in a much better position to be successful. It is a unique product that people love, the differentiation, a willingness to pay for that specialty existing in a large market. So one of the companies that I was really humbled to work with is a business called LaunchDarkly. It's a developer tools company that helps with feature flagging and feature management. The founders, Edith and John, were technical in nature and had direct experience with the development process in their past roles, and noticed this trend of people building feature flagging platforms internally, which was very strong, very strongly suggested that there was a need for this product because of people are spending internal engineering resources when they should be focused on the product that they're selling for customers. That suggests there's a lot of value. So we got super excited about LaunchDarkly because of the, very strong team, validation that this was a pain point, and the vision to go build a best of breed solution so that everyone could benefit from feature flags and being part of the core software development lifecycle for businesses. And with that, they were able to be part of the deployment process, which is a repeated motion. So it could be a consistently used product across not just development teams, but also product and marketing and customer support. So landing with engineers and growing across the organization. It's been a very exciting ride to see the success of LaunchDarkly. And like all things, when you look from the outside, it's always up and to the right. But the team did an amazing job managing through COVID and the early days of the business. And I give them a whole bunch of credit for the success they're seeing today.
Yeah, that's great. For the company I work for, actually, in my day job, Skyflow, our CRO was actually previously LaunchDarkly, who was the VP of sales there. So she saw a lot of that journey and growth in her time there. Were you the first check-in with LaunchDarkly?
My old firm and me, we did the Series B in the business.
Okay, yeah. I think the companies like LaunchDarkly, or these companies that realize that basically every engineering organization is writing a bespoke solution to a problem that every engineering organization basically faces, like feature flags, and then is able to take that and productize it and turn it into something and basically give birth to the managed service or the offloaded version of that. That's I feel like such a, if you can get onto that key insight, you can really build a great company that is super high value. But this comes up, I feel like, time and time again. There's so many engineering organizations, they're doing the same thing over and over. Authentication was one of those examples. Everybody was doing that, and no one thought, hey, I should go, we should just build this as a service and stop having everybody essentially build that bespoke solution.
Totally. And I think what's interesting, even in categories like that, where people are building the product internally, at the earliest stages, you still have to do a lot of validation of willingness to pay, because, engineers are very good. They're very sure of themselves. They're like, oh, I'm just going to whip it up. I'll just do it myself. I've shown you I could do it before at my last company. I'll do it again. And so even when it's a great testament that there is a pain there, we like to make sure that, most companies will pay for it, even if they do have engineers that are capable of building it internally. Another example of this that's been really exciting to see is, companies in the SOC 2 compliance space of doing, infrastructure data collection, which was very onerous and time consuming and something even less that engineers don't want to be doing themselves, and see the rise of companies like Drata and Fanta that make it super seamless so that engineers can focus on, product building as compared to compliance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, when you're, not every company you're going to invest in is going to turn into LaunchDarkly. So you're going to have some misses along the way as well. So when you miss out, maybe you decided, I'm not going to invest in this because I don't think that it's going to work, or you invest in something that, ultimately fails in some capacity. How do you go about learning from that so that you can get better essentially at your job and make less of those sort of strategic errors along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think every VC out there has the anti-portfolio of companies that they should have invested in that are monsters now. Deeply regret. And also the learnings from working with teams and, the role of sleeves and make magic happen, and just don't have the exit we're all anticipating. So for me, once again, going back to my like researcher, academic nature, I'm very rigorous with my note taking and my perspective on companies. So I actually like keep a running doc that I've had for, I don't know, my entire VC career that talks about like what my thesis was on the space, the risks. And I go back and I think through what did I get right and what did I get wrong as a pattern matching for the future. I've worked on teams where we would even do this annually, looking at the unicorns across the US and what the decision at the time was for not making the investment to see if they were recurring patterns. This is going to sound absolutely hilarious, but I was on a team where a recurring pattern was they did not tend to partner with French founders for some reason or not. And we learned that in the data and we completely changed our tune. And started very actively pursuing and evaluating, leaning forward with those founders. And, I was very humbled to invest in Airbyte, incredible French founders. And so, you
Yeah.
never know what these like, unconscious like team biases could be that are leading to poor results. And you just got to say, we're going to see it, fix it, and, hopefully be in the best companies.
Mhm. And what are some of the hard problems that you would love to see solved that haven't been solved yet by some future startup?
Gosh, that's a weighty question. There's so much that companies could do. So one theme that I'm super excited about right now is the application of large language models to improve the developer experience beyond code generation, but for other aspects of their workflow. So, I invested in a business called SpeakeasyAPI.dev that uses code generation and LLMs to do SDK creation across 8-9 languages at this point to help with the integration and adoption of APIs, both external and internal. That's pretty darn cool. Like, they're really helping people have better API experiences. Another area I'm looking at is how can we, improve the, incident response and management space. No engineer likes being woken up in the middle of the night. They don't like being half awake, half asleep, going through observability, data, and logs, and looking at the code and the knowledge base. Well, those are all great, really internal resources that you can apply a language model to understand what are the potential paths that have created this issue and provide really thoughtful recommendations of where to start in the remediation process and why to, accelerate mean time to detection and remediation. So that's an area that I've been looking at that is, unsolved today that I think is a very big space. We talk about the generation of code, but, the fixing of issues is a huge amount of time for people. So if there's anyone out there thinking about like the applications of large language models for developer experiences that is not, in IDE code generation, please reach out to me. I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like the couple that you mentioned there solve some real pain points. Like I think SDK generation, like there are tools like OpenAPI where you can use protos to generate SDKs, but they generally come out like they're more like a band-aid solution if you don't have people to build them because it's kind of bloated. That is not always like a perfect match to how a Java developer might be thinking about using an SDK. So if you can make that experience much better, that's like such a I think fantastic use case that alleviates a lot of pain for different companies. And then also if you can make on-call for engineering organizations like less of a hurdle and reduce that like that I don't know, beeper notification in the middle of the night to to get up groggily and like deal with an issue, then that's a huge I think that's a huge win for the engineering community as a whole. So that's really, really interesting. And then, outside of course, all the things that are happening around AI, and it's kind of hard when you think about what the future that to not, I think bias towards particularly AI, but how do you see maybe the startup landscape sort of changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Are you referring to like where people are like what products they're building or where they're located? Yeah, I just want to double click what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, so the way I'm thinking about it, like, let's move away maybe less from the types of products that people are going to develop, but more sort of the landscape, like how is investing going to change, or the sort of where startups exist. Those types of industry trends is what I'm would be particularly interested in.
Yeah, whenever there's you know a novel category that emerges, you see the rise of specialists in that domain. So, people that will only focus on cybersecurity or defense tech or AI. And they don't just exist as specialists within larger firms, but they go and build their own fund where they, build out a platform that can help those founders in ways that they think are superior than like generalist funds. So you're in the building a cybersecurity fund, you're going to go build out a network of buyers and operators in that space. If you were, in the crypto domain and you had your own fund, maybe even had a hedge fund as part of that, given that, public and private markets were very different there. So in AI, we do see the rise of funds that are AI specialist funds, where they have amazing academics and operators in this space that act as angels and advisors to the portfolio, or they build out, talent teams that recruit particularly for, MLEs or ML ops, because that's what their founders are looking for to build out the team in the early days. So I think in venture that we will continue to see specialization in terms of individuals and where they spend their time, as well as the VC firms themselves. You can see that like even the big platforms now, they would have a generalist fund, and now they have specialist funds for healthcare, crypto, or cybersecurity, AI. So everyone is gearing towards being as, fine to how to put it. Yeah, just like incredibly specialist in the areas that they spend time.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a trend that you see in a lot of industries. Like if you look at like medicine, like the level of specialization that's happened there, like over 100 years ago, you went to a doctor, and a doctor, like they did your surgery, and they also like, I don't know, like dealt with your cold or whatever, like, and delivered a baby. But now it's like you have people who are highly specialized because the breadth of knowledge is so wide that there's no way that one person could be like know everything. It's just like same in engineering, like the concept of I think a full stack developer is kind of going away because it's just the breadth of like in depth of understanding you need from like front end to back end to infrastructure, all this type of stuff is just there's just too much to know now. So it makes sense, I think, in venture that things are going like a similar direction where you're going to have those people who are basically specialists to really understand, is this something that makes sense, for this market, and have that depth of expertise that you can rely on.
Something that will be interesting to see over time, and you're kind of starting to see it, is even the role of a VC has many different components, right? There's the having a network and getting access to the founders. There's the relationship building component of it, kind of like being an account executive. There's the diligence process to determine if it's good fit. There's the like winning and negotiation. There's the support side of the house, post-investment with recruiting, go-to-market guidance, customer introductions, negotiating everything like, venture debt, There's a whole bunch of work so far that's been occurring where large funds have built out platform teams to help on the support side and kind of like unburden some of the work for the venture investor. I'm curious to see if we'll start to see for like pre wired money if people are starting to specialize. Like you have the person on the team that just knows everyone in cybersecurity and they can get you access and they're very friendly, but they can't run a diligence process. Like there's someone else on the team that's like, that's their superpower. Maybe they don't want to be like externally facing, but they know the questions to ask. They know how to drive to the right decision. That's their expertise. And that you start to see breaking off of like certain roles in venture so that teams as a whole can get into the best deals and work with the best founders.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So as we start to wrap up, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I'm a early stage partner at Quiet Capital focused on solutions that sell into technical audiences. Love myself a good dev tool, AI product, or anyone operating in the data space. I do have a blog called Memory Leak where I talk about, recent product announcements and cool pieces of news, and not just that they exist, but why are they important? From my vantage point, what am I seeing that makes them stand out and why you should take note? So please subscribe to Memory Leak. And if you are a founder building in any of those spaces at the earliest stage, I'd love to talk to you. So DM me on Twitter.
That's great. Yes. And Memory Leak, that's a fantastic blog title. I like that. But Astasia, thank you so much for being here, for coming back on the show. We've done a couple of episodes on generative AI, LLMs, and I think it was really interesting to hear sort of your perspective on this as an investor and kind of the things that you're seeing that's going on in the industry.
Totally. Thank you so much for having me, Sean.
Cheers.